Hey, this is Andrew Brown from the free AWS Cloud Project Bootcamp, bringing you another class. And this time, we're going to get into something super exciting. But let's get through our general slides as we always do. Then I'll introduce you to our guest instructor, and we're going to have a lot of fun this week. So, general reminder that this whole bootcamp is part of the AWS Ontario Virtual User Group. It's my means to promote my virtual group, where we do training together every single month. And so what I decided was I was already doing a lot of training prior every month. And I thought, wouldn't it be awesome if we did it around a project? And that's how this Cloud Project Bootcamp came about. And so if you were to go and search the user groups, it says I'm in Toronto. Technically, I'm in Scriber, but my group's called the AWS Ontario Virtual User Group because there is no one in my area right where I live that is interested in cloud. So I thought, hey, let's open it up to the world. And if you don't have a user group near you, you can always join mine. But if you do live near one, I strongly recommend you take advantage of your local user group, and you can find it on the AWS user group website over there. And I want to just go ahead and thank our sponsors because without our sponsors, this bootcamp would have been impossible to support. So I want to thank Adrian Cantrill, who makes really, really great cloud certification study courses, specifically around AWS. I know he's branching out into other things like Kubernetes and things like that. So make sure to check out that. And he's starting to make free content as well, which is great because his paid content was excellent. You know, his free stuff is going to be good as well. I also want to thank We Cloud Data, the Toronto Data Science Cloud DevOps School in Toronto. They've been great supporters for me for many, many years. And I'm really happy to have them as a sponsor. They run boot camps like this one, but with more support. They have a much better ratio from instructor to student. You know what I mean? Like if you want like 1 to 10 or 1 to 4 and get more personalized help with experts in the industry, they are a great boot camp to join. And they do have their own YouTube channel where they have free content. I want to show you a little bit more about WeCloud Data because I feel like I've neglected them the past week. So I just want to show you a couple of resources I think might be useful. But once we get through our slides here, I also want to thank AWS. AWS has helped me significantly with this bootcamp. They gave us AWS credits for our North American users, for our Sheet Clouds, for Fargate usage, which is the primary service that is for this bootcamp, because this is basically serverless containers deployment, modern application development. The many AWS employees and community members that helped me greatly appreciate AWS's help here. I just want to remind you folks that these live streams are every Saturday until May, hopefully not into June because it's been going on for quite a while at noon Eastern Toronto time. The videos are recorded and they do go up onto the official playlist. So you can catch up if you missed the videos. Remember to read the FAQs, the outlines, the code of conduct, Discord announcements. I try to keep these up to date. As of lately, I've been falling behind here, but check this stuff out, especially if you're coming in for the first time. It will answer a lot of your questions, help you understand how to navigate our community and to best make use of it. And so from there, I would love to introduce you to our guest instructor, Rohini. So hi, Rohini. And Shala is here. So Shala is sticking with the boot camp. We lost her for a couple of weeks, but she came back strong, which is okay. But Rohini, if you can go ahead and introduce yourself, super excited to have you here for
Hey,
this
thank
week.
you. Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you. And hello, everyone. Hello, Shala. Nice to see you as well. Hi, my name is Rohini Gaukar. I am a senior developer advocate at AWS. I recently moved to Toronto, Canada, and that's where I'll get to meet lovely Andrew. So I have been with AWS for last 9 years, and talking about CloudFormation is love. It's love at first sight because I joined AWS as a support engineer, and I was given CloudFormation as support tickets. So I was managing all support tickets for CloudFormation, and it was just love at first sight. This was 2014, by the way. So I cannot believe it's been 9 years of that. So I've done multiple roles. I've been a support engineer, I've been a solutions architect, but I think I found home when I became a developer advocate where I can work with the lovely community, which fuels my passion for working with the community. And of course, some part of content creation, which I love sharing my knowledge as well. So that's me.
2014. Did they even have YAML format for CloudFormation back
No,
then? So you were doing it
no,
all, Jason.
We were doing all JSON. Even do you remember those errors? Update rollback failed, like a long error. Now
Mhm.
I don't even remember that error. Those errors, I that was my specialty to solve those errors because people would do some manual changes, and a lot of big enterprise customers would get into that failure error. That was my specialty to go and solve those issues.
So, with all the emerging new technologies like CDK and Terraform, do you think that there's a lot of value in understanding and learning CloudFormation today? I have a personal opinion about that, but wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I still think we need to know CloudFormation, honestly, because see, when I was a support engineer wanting to go as a solutions architect, I think CloudFormation was a big thing because you as an architect should also be able to use infrastructure as code where it began, right? And CDK and everything else is a wrapper, you could say, on an abstraction on CloudFormation. In the end, if you get an error, and you think it says internal error or it says something broke, you still need to go and debug CloudFormation, and it's the magic that is doing in the big behind. Like for me, I feel like you should always know the basics and then add the foundation. So for me, yes, that's the answer. What's your answer? I'm interested to know as well.
Well, I'm one of those people that really like CloudFormation, despite that there has been new emerging technologies. I think that there's a fit for everything. The things that I like about CloudFormation that make me stick with it is that the simplicity of it. So when I create that template, I know that there are no other intermediate layers that might have abstraction that I have to debug through. I'm very confident that a CloudFormation template I made now will that API does not change very often. So you go a few years later or whatever, and I'm not trying to debug intermediate tables or things like that, or doing any kind of upgrades. And I think with the emergence of ChatGPT, it makes it super in Guard or whichever other generative services that I just say, hey, I want this thing, and it generates out CloudFormation, and I get the best of both worlds where I'm not having to. I reduce my typing. I mean, there's a lot still gets generated out, but I reduce my typing or work to generate those templates. But I get the maintenance because when you maintain applications over a long period of time, if you don't have the people behind it to constantly keep them up to date and stuff like that, I feel that that is a trade off there. Now, I think CDK is still really great. I think like if you are a developer focused organization and they are working all the time and it makes them happy to program in Python, their infrastructure as code, there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm still in the camp of CloudFormation. But I'm just excited to have another person
Just
that is also as
old
excited
school
about
folks talking
CloudFormation.
here, right?
Hmm.
We are so old school. We're like, hey, stick to the basics. If it works, it works. Like, don't go and reinvent the whole thing. But I think there was a question in the chat, like, what's the value add? Like you mentioned, right? Like if you're an organization which doesn't want to work on JSON and YAML files, and you love working in, and there are folks, right, who love a programming language. There are folks who love Python, or someone who loves JavaScript, whatever it is, you want to write it in your programming language. I think that's where CDK is good at. Like if you're good at that programming language and you want to write everything, even the infrastructure in that language, that is where it is good at. If you are someone like me, like for example, I am a more operations person than a dev person. I always say this because I did come from a heavy operations background. I love writing CloudFormation templates. That's easier for me to actually do that. And there are a lot of new services that support CloudFormation as by default. Like for example, the Code Catalyst, which went GA just last 2 weeks ago, it supports CloudFormation. I don't know when the CDK thing is going to come out. So that is also other thing which you mentioned, Andrew. Like the support for these beautiful services is going to be long lasting than the newer versions, and upgrading. It's a lot. It's a lot for me.
And there's a lot of services that actually rely on raw CloudFormation, like Service Catalog and things like that. And so, you are going to be able to get, like, especially from the operations of AWS, a lot of stuff there. But it really just comes down to team preference and your skill sets. There are things that CDK can do that CloudFormation can't do.
Yeah,
Like there's probably like recursively iterative stuff that I'm thinking that a programming language can do that CloudFormation might have a
exactly.
struggle with. But it's just that it's great to have a lot of options and choose what's best for you. But use CloudFormation if you can. I'm gonna be a bit
Or
biased
at
there.
least learn it.
I'll be
Like
honest.
even if you don't use it, just learn about CloudFormation. It's going to help you in the long run.
So, but and one thing I really like about CloudFormation versus Terraform or CDK versus Terraform is that AWS manages the state of your infrastructure. So, like with Terraform, it generates out a state file, and that tells you exactly how you left your resources. But you got to put that somewhere and manage it. Now there's Terraform Cloud, there's N0, there's Spacelift, but you could also store them in like S3 buckets. But the thing is that you can lose that file, lose your state. Whereas with CloudFormation, it's managed for you. You never have to think about it. I can't imagine anyone's ever lost their state before. And so that is another advantage of it. So that's that. But I did say I wanted to talk a little bit more about WeCloud Data, just because I noticed that they have some open courses, and I thought that they were actually quite relevant for boot campers, as I know some folks need some SQL help as I was doing an office hours. So what I'm going to do is go and go back to my screen here. And Shala, but before we move on, do you like using CloudFormation, or are you in the CDK camp or Terraform or Pulumi?
So I was, well, I'm not gonna say was. I still love my Terraform, but the project I've been working on for the last few months, I had to do a bunch of CloudFormation and fell in love with it. So I think it's awesome, and I'm actually messing around with CloudFormation at this point, like on a daily basis. And it was something easy to pick up and grasp, whether you do it in YAML or JSON. Let me see. My CloudFormation templates are in YAML.
Well, you know what? It's interesting that and we might see this today, but when I write CloudFormation YAML templates, sometimes I just can't remember the YAML and I just start writing JSON in line in the YAML, which you can do. You can do, but like sometimes it's just not worth, like, I'm just like, I don't know what it wants. So I'll just write it in JSON and I'll be done with it. So, we might find those things here today. But what I'll do is I'll go back and pull up my screen. So let me find my format here. We'll go over here for a moment. And I just want to talk about a couple things I noticed that WeCloud Data has. So WeCloud Data, they now have a couple, they call them WeCloud Open courses. And they're basically free courses. And I think they might also have some live instruction with it. But if you sign up, it's free. There's no credit card or anything to get in here. But you can go in their catalog. And if you look for self-paced courses, which I already have it running here, but if we go WeCloud Open here on the left-hand side, we have some introductions to SQL, and they also have an introduction to Python. And so the SQL one is the one that I think that some boot campers can take advantage of, because I just didn't spend a lot of time teaching the SQL. And the thing is, if you run into SQL issues, you got to know it. And so over here, you can see that they actually were having live classes for a few sessions. They'll probably have a few more other cohorts. So there is an opportunity to interact with them. I think it's free too. Like the cohorts are free. Apparently you can register over here, but they have a bunch of modules here on the right-hand side. So it covers things like, if we go into here, basic operations, or more complex ones like functions and aggregations. And they're a data school, so they really know this stuff pretty well. But I'm just saying that if you're still kind of shaky with your SQL knowledge, go check it out. It's free. There's no reason not to. So anyway, what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and close that. You can see I have the AWS Cloud Project Bootcamp. We're on week 10. I can't believe it. We're nearly done, and I hope the boot campers are holding in. Boot campers, how are you doing? Are you caught up on your work? If you're caught up, give me a 100. If you are a little bit behind, give me a range of negative number to how far behind you are. Would love to see that in the chat there. And while we wait to see those numbers roll in so we get an idea, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go pull up our diagram. Some folks are caught up. So for those who are probably here caught up, for those who aren't in the stream, they're probably going to watch this delayed by a week. So it says negative 1,000. I can understand that. That DynamoDB week was really hard. But some aren't too bad, like -8, -3 is not actually bad. I know some folks had some serious hiccups, but that's okay. Just stick with it. And there's ample time to get grading afterwards. But here I have in front of us our architectural diagram. And we haven't been really had time to keep it up to date, but it's changed a bit. Like we have CloudFront in here. We have other components in here. We will have to update this at some point. It probably would be good for us to have our diagram fully created, especially at the physical level, because then we could spell everything out. If people remember from week 0, the physical one, which we did not create, is where it would not just show the connections between services, but it would show additional information like IP addresses and things like that. So, I think that if I had time, I would have had that fully developed and we would use that as a reference, but that's okay. We know we're building the bridge as we go here, which is like the real world. And so we'll figure it out. So I think that what would be a really good goal to start with would be to start to convert our Fargate service, our containers, our cluster, that kind of stuff over to CloudFormation. And so what I'm going to do is go over to our repository here, and we're going to need to branch. So our last week was week 9 again, and you don't branch, I just branch, but get ready to open up your Git pod because this is what we're doing. I'm going to go ahead and create a new branch here, and this is going to be week 10 again. And we do not have instructions like the previous weeks because we are just flying into it here. I'm going to go ahead and hit create, and we're going to go over here, and I'm going to launch mine. So get your Git pod environment up and running, and make sure you get logged into your AWS account because we definitely are going to be going in there today. So go ahead and type in Git pod. I'm just logging in. I noticed that they changed the UI a bit. So here now it actually shows you what you want to open explicitly, which is great. And I guess you can see what class you have open there, but we'll go ahead and open that. Also, what does everyone think about the new GitHub design? Did anyone notice that GitHub changed their design a little bit here? If you click into a file like this, it goes like this now. This is new, right? Or just not keeping on top of it.
This is how it used to be when you're looking at like pull requests or you're comparing commits. I think this is good. Yeah, this is how it used to do when you used to do this between different commits, but I think it's nice. At least I can see.
Well, it's been really great for grading because I've been able to quickly find files, and the symbols have been great for me. But it was a bit jarring when it was on the homepage, or on the home repo. So I'm glad that they've toned that down a bit. But we'll go back over here and see if we're logged into a Git pod now. All we need is the AWS CLI installed to use CloudFormation, and so we already have the requirements for it. I like putting everything in this AWS folder. When we talked to Chrissy, she said that from a structural standpoint, it makes sense to keep your CloudFormation templates with the repos or subdirectories of what they are. And I think that is a great suggestion as well. So we may end up changing that. So for the time being, I'm just going to make a new folder in here called CFN. And then we can complain about my poor choice of structuring later. Now, CloudFormation can be written in JSON or YAML to just I don't know how people can handle JSON, so we're going to go with YAML today. But the main question is it going to be YML or YAML? And I always forget, but I always like to. Rohini, do you have any opinions on that? Because I'm just going to go ahead and name it YAML.
That's fine. I am YAML. Yeah.
For those who don't know, like YAML, I think the creator leans towards YAML, and so, but in AWS there are places where it has to be YAML, and it has to be YML. So, for instance, build spec YAML for Cloud Build, we found out that was YML. And for SAM, it likes the templates to be YAML. So there's some variations there, but even if we name it something differently, we can actually specify what we want it to be. So what we want to do is we want to start writing some CloudFormation. And the first thing we need is to say what version of CloudFormation we need. What is that called? It's that first line that always has the date. So
AWS version? Am I right? Oh, I always copy paste. Yeah, AWS template format version.
Well, this is the thing is like I always copy. I just know that it's there, and I always look for it. So the first thing we need is this line called AWS format version. Exactly right, and it has a time there, and so that's how they version it. And as you can see, this one says 2010. I don't know if this is the right one, but the thing is that it hasn't changed forever, and that's a good thing because that tells you that they aren't changing things on us often, and the stuff is going to be stable. So what we can do, if you're all following along, is make sure you have this template.yaml file in our AWS CNF directory. CNF is short for CloudFormation. And we need to have this first line, this AWS template format version. So we'll type in AWS template format version. And I'm not exactly sure what it's supposed to be. So I do have some CloudFormation templates over here. I just want to see if it matches up. And we'll use this as a reference. And it is. It's 2010-0909. Okay, well, that's easy. It's Surprised I haven't memorized that by now. 2010, 09, 09.
Same here.
It must be somebody's birthday on the CloudFormation team. And so, that's going to tell all the format for the rest of the CloudFormation, the syntax of it. It's like version 1, version 2, but they use dates. So that's the first thing that we have. And I guess the next thing is that we probably want to start defining some resources. And in CloudFormation, you have these top level structures. I don't know the proper word. There is actually a proper word for it. I don't remember it. And so we have things, and there's it's parameters is one. Parameters, I think. Resources. We have outputs. I remember what else there is.
These are sections, right? Outputs, parameters, mappings.
There's mappings. That's what I was saying. There's mappings.
Conditions. I mean, those are a little bit, but yeah.
But is there any other ones? Is there any other ones?
There are a lot actually. There are
a lot.
Metadata as well is one of them.
Metadata, that's right.
Yeah, and you can have a description actually, which helps you write what this template is about.
So there are
properties.
Oh, properties. Sorry.
Properties. That's what I use a lot.
Yeah, those are inside those sections. Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay,
Yeah.
so these are our top level ones. Which ones we're going to use?
Descriptions
we'll find out
as well. Yeah.
Sorry, which?
You need description. You need to add a description.
Oh, is there one called description?
Yeah.
I think I would know at this point. I've written so much, but but my point is that you make your templates and you copy paste them, and after that it becomes super easy. But we're trying to do it from scratch, so trying to dig this up from the back of our head. Can you zoom in a little bit? I can do better. I can increase the font. So, and that's fair. I think it's a little bit small, so we'll go here and bump it up. We usually have it a bit larger, and so we'll comment this out. But for the description, this one is going to be our setup ECS cluster. And so one thing that's really important is understanding how you're going to break up your CloudFormation templates, because I guess the idea is that when you have your infrastructure, when you design your architecture, there's different ways of doing it. And I guess the most common way is doing a multi-layered or 3-tier architecture where you have, see if we can find a graphic of that. So multi-layer architecture. Type in AWS, so we get some here AWS, and we'll see if we get any kind of nice diagrams. And so they kind of describe. I wish I brought a graphic here, but the idea is that you usually have 3 layers. So you'll have one that is your. You might have a database layer, infrastructure, like
API layer, and then there is the web layer.
There's an application layer. Yeah. So I don't know why we can't find an easy graphic. Oh, over here, web tier, app tier, database tier. That's an okay one. And so it's not, again, it's multi-layer. So you can have more than 3 tiers and they can slightly vary. But the idea is that you have your database. I was saying infrastructure, application tier, web tier. So the application tier could be where our cluster is, where our load balancer, auto scaling groups and stuff like that. Web tier would be actually managing the compute itself. So whether it's a virtual machine, your serverless functions, your serverless containers, things like that. And then database is its own isolate thing. But the idea is that when we create a CloudFormation template, we have to figure out where those boundaries are. And it's not just a matter of saying that it's these layers, but it's also how the services interconnect and whether you need to tear things down and put things back up or update them, right? And, I found out, and this is not with serverless containers, but I found out the hard way when doing traditional virtual machines, where if you, there was an issue where we were using code deploy, and we decided to put too much of our code into CloudFormation. And what happened is we had orphaned or dangling resources because the new auto scaling group would be created and it wasn't managed by CloudFormation. And at the time, you could not import resources. So you have to understand the limitations of what your tools do. But that's not a problem anymore. And so that's where those boundaries can get drawn. And we'll figure that out. We'll feel it through as we work through the application. But the only way we're going to know is if we keep tearing down and setting up our app and trying to update it. Because even if you build it once, if you never update, you'll never know that's a problem until you go ahead and update and you then realize, oh, I can't update my code. I'm just, you know what I mean? Or otherwise it'll take the whole thing down. So for now, we're going to keep the scope to setting up an ECS cluster for that, I think.
Yeah, just to add, a lot of folks also create CloudFormation templates separate, like for networking infrastructure is in one CloudFormation template, and then the application is in a different template. So that because networking infrastructure, you don't really change that often. You might be deploying your application more often and change that. So you don't want to have like a big CloudFormation template, or you don't want to keep waiting while it's deploying to all those resources. So it's good to have piecemeal of different CloudFormation templates. That will save you from, and a lot of times when I'm building CloudFormation templates, I try to have smaller sections, because otherwise if I'm trying to update a stack and it fails, and then I have to wait for a while for it to roll back, so it takes a lot of time. So I try to make smaller ones and then combine them if I have to.
And so what I'm doing here is I'm just breaking this up here. So we have a networking database application. I feel like there's one other one we can have there. But yeah, I think that I absolutely agree with that. Is that, the smaller they are, the more composable they are, the more flexibility you have with them. And it's just going to be really dependent on what they are. Because if you build out your, let's say here, like we have one for our cluster, you know what I mean? That one's going to be reliant on what you have on your networking one, because you might be referencing them cross stack. And so sometimes what you have to do is you have to tear down this one to update that one. And so it really, the order does matter. And so you figure that stuff out as you go. Like your database one might be orphaned over here, or it could also be reliant on your networking stack. And so that's something that we will have to figure out as we go. We're using the default VPCs, but actually when I do set this stuff up, I tend to set up a new VPC for some reason. I just like to, because then you have full control over it and you know exactly what's in it. But I think if I did this bootcamp again, we would have a networking week and we would have set up our network manually. But then over here, you might have your application. Remember, there could be one for CI/CD, and we actually do this. So your CI/CD one can be reliant on, it could be cross-referencing these two. So it could be cross-referencing this and this. So, you have to consider how those are all connected, okay? And so Sajal says, nested stacks are not great as it seems in that case. Well, you just get trade-offs for that, like nested stacks, or I do use nested stacks. So up here, like we haven't done this yet, but if we go into, is it this one here? If I go back over here, I do actually have nested stacks, CI/CD. Is it this one? CNF? Here it is. So I have nested stacks here, like code build notify. So nested stacks are really good if you are reusing templates and you want generic ones. It's more like where you get into cross stacks where you run into issues. But what we'll do is we'll go back over to our template here. And we know that we want to definitely set up an ECS cluster. And you might say, well, how do I know what to write for an ECS cluster? And the thing is, you can Google everything and walk through the documentation. So Rohini, if you didn't know how to set up ECS cluster, how would you go and find it? What would
I would go and find some sample templates, which are very easily available, by the way. There's just one link where you can find everything. If you just search for AWS CloudFormation sample templates, just Google that, and you'll find one link which has all the links to different places, because I know it's all spread out. So I think it's this one. Can I go back? Actually, one link back, and the second link. Yes, I think that should be the one. Here you'll find them by services, by samples, different documentation, application framework. There are solutions ones as well. So depending on which one you're looking for, you can also find the links there. But yes, if I'm looking for a particular resource, like you mentioned, ECS, I'll just search it, and it's readily available in the sample section of the documentation. So if I search for, let's say, ECS and then go down, okay, you are here. So yeah,
you can also try container service. So for this one in particular, these are region specific. So let's go to US East 1. Maybe we'll see more over there. So do we have a US East 1?
Yes,
Virginia?
Yes.
And we'll go into possibly services here.
Yes.
And
ECS is not here. Interesting.
Well, let's keep looking around because it might be somewhere here. It looks like they have a Ruby on Rails one, which is nice. I do like Ruby on Rails. So we didn't find one this way. Let's go back here and take a look. And we will go and check out the snippets.
I think, yeah.
Well, just as a curious, I've never gone.
ECS, yes, there is one below EC2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it says ECS is a container management service that makes it easy to run, stop, and manage Docker containers. Yep. And that looks like it. So it's interesting that they call it a snippet because there is a lot of stuff that's involved. But we'll go down to the YAML one. And so the idea here is you can see the parameters. And then we can also see mappings, which is cool. We can see resources, which is the meat of it. And in here, we have a cluster getting set up, a security group, inbound rules, and stuff like that. So, and we have a task definition. So we have a lot of stuff, actually a lot of stuff. This has the load balancer, basically everything, almost everything that we need. So what I would say is what we can do is we can go ahead and copy in the ECS cluster. Really, it's just one line like that. That's all there is. Is it really that easy to make a cluster? Is it really like those 3 lines?
It's a blank cluster.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what I'll do, and by the way, folks, I'll keep pasting these links in here so you folks don't have to type this all out manually, but I'm going to go here and go back into Gitpod here. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some kind of good Chrome extension or VS Code extension for this, but we're going to do it manually because that's how I do it. And we'll go here and we have our resources here and we have our ECS cluster. And it looks like that's all we need to set up a new cluster. Now, I want to point out a few things here is that we have our ECS cluster. And this thing here is called the logical name. And this thing is really important because it's how we're going to reference other resources in our CloudFormation templates. It's the name that's going to show up in CloudFormation. And so, you know, you want to try to do a good job to name these so they're clear. Is there any, let's see, is there any way to convert a particular already provisioned resource to CloudFormation stack with the current configuration? There was tools out there like CloudFormer. I'm sure they still exist, like CloudFormer 2. I don't know the state of them, but we could like look at it as like CloudFormer 2. Former 2. And so I think this is a tool. I mean, I haven't looked at it in a while, but there are tools out there, but I personally don't use them. I just write the code because it's not too hard. Attempts to simplify by providing reusable rig templates. So there are tools out there. I don't know what they are. But, you know, for me, I personally would rather go walk through it all and make sure my configuration is what it is. But I understand why you might suggest that because then you have a base template to start with. So, but I think it's worth it to walk through it. I don't know, Rohini, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, so initially CloudFormer was like a third-party thing which we onboarded, but then it was not maintained. Honestly, there were a lot of resources that it didn't maintain, so it was a bit tedious. But then a CFN actually has an import kind of an operation. I've not played with it myself, but there is an import operation which, if you have something that is not created by CloudFormation and is created in a resource, you can actually import it into a CloudFormation template. So you could do that so that CloudFormation can then, you know, do the CRUD operations instead of you doing it manually. There is an option, but yeah, it's a bit like CloudFormer would only create a template of what you've done. It wouldn't really necessarily import it into CloudFormation. This one would do it. So do check out the import functionality of CloudFormation. Let us know.
And for those who make it to our service week, I think we might actually use it. I think I used it once, and I was saying like I know this feature exists. I'd never used it. It was the first time I used it, so there is a bit of experience there, but I don't know everything about it. So we do have this resource here, of ECS cluster, and you know, you do have to think about how you want to do your logical names, but this thing obviously has more options than this. And so you've been seeing that we've been using the AWS CLI a lot. So if I look at cluster here, the API pretty much maps the CLI and CFN basically use this. Well, they do. They use the same API. And so a lot of these things, when you look at create cluster, probably are going to match up, is my guess. But let's find out. So here we have the create cluster page. And if we go down and we take a look at ECS cluster, CNFF, that's what I always do. I type in ECS cluster CNFF. I'll always get to the user guide that tells me all the fields there. And I kid you not, I will literally walk through every single one of these and learn what they are. And then after a while, you just know what they are. It's not a big deal. But the interesting part is that when you use the AWS console, not all of these options show up in the console. And so sometimes you end up learning about features you did not know that were there because they were being done for you indirectly by AWS, or There's not that many, but there has been in the past some features that were only accessible via the API.
Yeah.
Not many, but there have been some. So what I would do is I would go here and I would just start reading through them. So the first property here is capacity providers. So I go here and it says the short name of one or more capacity providers to associate with it. That's if we want to attach capacity to it. And then it'll say required no. So I don't have to have that there. Then we have the cluster name. It says required no. You don't even have to name the cluster. If you don't name the cluster, it will name it for you. So if we go back to our template here, notice we don't even have the name. So if we don't specify name, and Shazad, I really appreciate the 10 pounds. I said it again. That's like worth, I don't know, like 700,000 Canadian dollars. So I greatly appreciate the currency there. And so the thing is that you can have it name the resources. I think that in most cases you do want it to do that because then you don't have to worry about conflicting names. And then everything is going to be named by convention based on your stack. So I think what it does is that your stack has a name, like a stack name when we deploy it. And then the logical names of these is going, like the name of the cluster will be based off of that. So Rohini, do you like to name your resources explicitly, or do you like to let the template take care of it?
It depends. If it is IAM role, then yes.
Okay.
Decide. But if it's something that I'm going to be using specifically somewhere else, I might name it. But if I'm creating, what happens, Andrew, when you're testing, you don't just test on one, right? You're just deploying something and you're changing something to deploy again. Then that naming issue comes because there's an already existing resource with that name. So if I'm testing something initially, I just let it create everything with random names and then backtrack.
Okay. And there are ways that we can create our own names but have it based so that it's generated on stack names and stuff like that using those special variables. Maybe we'll look at that in a bit. But anyway, the point is that if we come back over here, you can see that we have a lot of options and a lot of them are not required. So, there's that. So what we're going to do is now that we have this, let's go ahead and deploy it. And yeah, I do believe that you can deploy a cluster with no options, because when we launched Fargate, remember that it launched it and it doesn't need any resources running. So it definitely can launch a cluster like this. So what I would like to do is do that. And I definitely have code sitting around to deploy CloudFormation. But let's go ask our friend ChatGPT, because it's always fun to use ChatGPT. And what I've been trying to generate on ChatGPT is I've been trying to generate out, those Buy Balenciaga videos? Has anyone seen those? You know what I'm talking about? No? Is it just me? Buy Balenciaga?
Yeah.
Buy Balenciaga? Nobody? It's like a meme. So it's like these videos, and like they dress them up as like Balenciaga. So I know you can't hear it, but like they say they look like they're wearing like fashion clothes, and they're always saying Balenciaga. And so I was here and I was trying to make one of like Babylon 5, like famous actresses or actors, and I just couldn't make it work. But anyway, we'll go here and I'll make a new chat and we'll just say, write some AWS CLI that will deploy a CloudFormation template. And we'll see what it spits out. So here it has create stack. And so this is where I don't really like what it's done here, because when you have CloudFormation, there is at some point they had it like used to have to create stack, like delete stack or update stack. But at one point they improved that flow, and now we just have like deploy.
Yeah.
So this is where, I mean, ChatGPT is great, but like it doesn't always know the history of services and what is automatic or what's going to work here. So in this case, it didn't really work. Now, it doesn't mean it wouldn't work. It's just I don't think you'd want to do it this way. So what we'll do is I do have some code lying around here, and we'll take a look at what I did in here, because I know I like this one. So I'll go to the deploy service. And down below here, the way I'm doing it is, I'm doing AWS CloudFormation deploy. So I think that is the way that we should do it. Rohini, do you agree?
Agree, completely agree. It's just that backward compatibility is there, but yes, this is the way.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is just pull this off screen, and I'm just going to start typing it in manually so that everyone can follow along. And so we've been keeping all our bin scripts over here. I'm going to make a new one here called CFN. We might change that later, but for now it'll be CFN. And I'm going to make a new one here, and this will be deploy for now. And again, we might switch these around, as I like to do that all the time. And so this is going to be a bin bash script. So we're going to need at the top here, as always, a shebang, and then it's going to be user bin env bash. I'm looking at the top right corner. It's because I'm referencing as we go here. And so let's get that in there. And then I like to do a set E. This will stop the execution if anything fails of the script if it fails. Okay, and then from here, what we want to do is we want to have our CloudFormation command. So it's going to be AWS CloudFormation deploy, and I'll put a backslash here. We don't need to set a profile because we're going to use the default, because the Rohini, because the way Gitpod works is we have to set our secret and access key. We can't really set profiles with it, so we're just going to use the default settings. Okay. We also set a default region, so mine's CA Central. But I think we have to specify a stack name for sure. So that will be, like my cluster for now, which is not the most creative name. And then we need to specify where the template is. And so that's what we'll do next here. So we have template.yaml. We'll just fix this up here in a second. And one other thing that I like to do is I don't like to, I personally, I like to review the change sets always. I know that seems kind of crazy, but I'm going to say no execute change set. What that will do is that will be so that we can review the change set before we accept it. Execute, no execute change set. And then one other thing is we need this capabilities thing. So capabilities, I think I spelled that right. And it's a capability named IAM. Okay. So what we have here is it's going to take our template. It's going to name it the stack name. This is so that we can manually review our change set before we commit our stuff. And this is a permissions thing. So if we don't have this line here, it might complain saying, hey, you need permissions. And then you put the thing in that it wants. And there's like this and then something else. There's always like two of them. I forget what they are. But those are the three things I want. But we'll have to get this template file to point to the correct location. So to make this really easy for the time being, I'm just going to manually put in the full path for this so that everyone can just follow along. We don't have to figure out environment variables on the call here. And so we place this in workspace, AWS Bootcamp here.
Hey, Andrew, on line 6, someone's calling out in chat. Are you missing a opening quote?
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
7. Yeah.
Sure. And so up here, I'm just going to set a new variable just with the path so we can see it. And we'll go ahead and paste in this down below here. And then what we want here is a / AWS CFN template.yaml. And then down below here, we can just put the path in here as well. So what I'll do is I'll just make sure this is very visible on screen. And we'll give folks a moment here to catch up. So when you have this done, folks, give me a +1, and then we'll proceed to the next step here. I think there are some limitations around stack names. I think in the past that sometimes it's like it can't be too long. So, sometimes, you will have to, I think, you will have to compromise your wonderful naming schema. But you figure these out as you go. So we'll wait a moment here. And folks are moving faster today. So we got +1s here. Has anyone not done this part? If you can give me a -1, just tell me here. If we need to give you a teeny tiny bit more time. For those at this point, like everyone can keep up to pace because we're in week 10. So we have all the fast trackers here.
Nice.
So one -1. So we'll just give a minute or so here. And then we will attempt to do this deploy, and we'll see how it goes. So I think we will go give it a try. So what we'll do is we need to chmod this file. So we'll say chmod. I don't know if it's actually pronounced chmod. I just always say that. No one's ever questioned me. Well, Charlotte, do you call it chmod or what do you call it?
I never thought about it. I don't think I call it anything.
Okay.
I think I say chmod or
chmod.
yeah, something like that.
That actually makes more. I mean, it sounds actually better if you say chmod, or I don't even know what it stands for. Like if we do chmod,
Change. How can it be change modification? Change
change
permissions actually, but
change file mode bits. But
Yeah.
where's the F?
that's the yeah.
I thought it'd been like
Change
modification.
mode.
I wouldn't think it'd be mode bits. Mode bits.
chmod. Yes. See, I agree with Sajid.
Well, to me, it'll always be chmod. But so we've done the U plus X, and we're going to do bin CFN deploy, and we'll see what happens. So we'll hit enter, and we'll scroll up, and you can see it says waiting for a change set to be created. And then it's going to say change set created successfully. Run the following command to review the changes. And so it's saying here that we can review them. I actually never run it in here. I always go over to the console, but for fun, I'm going to go copy and paste this, and we'll take a look here.
It's so nice. It's giving the whole command though. That it's not just saying like figure out your own command. So it's nice.
Oh, it's nice. You just copy paste it.
Yeah.
So we see this here, and I'm just not used to trying to read it this way, but let's look at it for fun. So it says add ECS cluster, AWS ECS cluster. So that's what it's going to do. It's going to add this thing in here. Now, something that might be interesting also, so if we hit up here, we can try to change the output to table. I'm just wondering what that looks like for fun. It's a little bit better. I could probably also try if we did like query. I think it's called this here for fun. Or maybe I need a period in front of it. Sometimes we do this. Okay, I can't figure out the formatting, but that's okay. I was just trying to see if I could make it prettier. But what we'll do is we'll go over to our AWS account, wherever it is. Here it is. And we'll make our way over to CloudFormation. Yeah, there's a bunch of arguments there for sure. I've heard some very interesting ones about kubectl. And so it says review in progress. And so that means it's waiting for us to review it. So we'll go into my cluster. And then this is actually new. They changed it side by side. Just so you know, every AWS team gets to do whatever they want until Cloudscape comes out. What's it called? Cloudscape. Has anyone heard of this? Design UI. Here it is. So at some point, Rohini probably knows what I'm talking about. But at some point, they're going to roll this out, and because I think it's just like all the teams just like keep doing whatever they want, and I think someone's cracking down internally, and we're going to see this. If you use Code Catalyst, this is the design in Code Catalyst. So I won't be upset if they do that with CloudFormation because they're getting a little bit interesting with the UI. But we'll go back over here. Sorry.
Yeah, just to, like in the CloudFormation UI, just click on that stacks minus the stacks 3 where it's written stack 3. Yeah, just click on minus and then it closes. I like this UI, the old one.
Okay. So anyway, over here, I didn't know you could do that. Wow, that is great. So over here, we have a bunch of tabs. We have our stack info. So nothing super excited here, but you can see that it's being initiated by us. Events, this will be where we see things that it's doing as it creates it. The resources that will be created at the end. The outputs, these are defined by us, things that we want to see. Parameters, the things that we inputted into the template. The template itself, so this will be the template fully generated. So if you use something like SAM, Serverless Application Model, which is kind of a, it's a sub-language of, it's a macro actually, but it's a sub-language of it. It will generate out the full thing. Same thing with if you use CDK, you don't know what it's generating out. You can go here, see what it generates out in full. Okay, but we'll go to our change set, and here we have a change set, and we'll click into it. And so this is the thing is you could have somebody that deploys it and then somebody that writes off on and confirms it. I don't know who actually does it that way, but the reason I do it this way is so that I get an opportunity to review what's changing, because it's very important what changes here, because you could lose stuff if you don't know what you're doing. So notice down here, it says add ECS cluster resource type, and that's what it's going to do. We can see these other tabs here. I don't think I ever look at them, but what I'm looking for is what is being added. Is it being updated? Is it being replaced? right? Because sometimes you think you're updating, but it actually is going to tear it down and set it up again. And that could be a problem if, like, let's say it's a database or something important, or an interruption in service, right? Because if it's being replaced, then you could experience interruption service. So you have to be aware of that. And so what I'll
Yes,
do,
and
sorry.
like in the documentation, like where it says, you already saw that required no, there is also a section called update requires, like what happens when you try to update that resource. So a lot of people actually miss that because they feel, oh, it doesn't matter, but sometimes you might just be changing a name of something, and that actually needs it to tear down the whole resource and create a new resource. So that's where a cloud formation change set come to help you. So anytime you see a resource, any resource, like I think your ECS cluster, even for that, in the documentation, it says update requires as an option. And I think that was
Oh,
the
right.
biggest mistake. Like a lot of customers used to come when I was in the support. People would not look at it and they were like, I didn't want to delete this. I just wanted to rename it.
Here, there we go.
Exactly. So
Okay.
that's where it says like what happens when you change the name of that cluster. It will actually go and replace the entire cluster with a new cluster. So this is where change sets actually come in place because they will show you, oh, you've changed the name of this cluster. We are going to add a new cluster and remove this old one. So I think that's useful.
You know what? I've never noticed this here, and I've been doing. I just know based on like using it, and I go, oh yeah, I changed that. It changes it. I never noticed this here. It's been here the entire
This is
time.
very important. Yeah, if you click on replacement, it'll also explain. Like the one before that, it's like no interruption. So nothing will change. Like, but if you do replace, and some are conditional, so it depends on certain other properties. So they would also say like conditional replacement. So you never know until it actually happens. So that's where I think change sets really help. And like just to add a note, like I created a blog recently with Code Catalyst and CloudFormation, added change set as one of those manual steps. Before you actually push to deployment, it goes through a CI/CD pipeline. Added change set as a manual step, like hey, someone needs to review it and say yes, this works fine, and then it will go ahead and deploy that. So I think there are places where change sets are really helpful. Before that, it was really crazy. Like customers would come to support and say, I don't even know what changes you're going to do. Like there's just a dry adoption, but that was also useless. And then customers would break their CloudFormation deployments and then come back. So this is a good addition.
And so, yes, Josh, there is case like the thing is the only way to rename it is to replace it, because some of these things are immutable in a sense. What I actually now I think I was like, well, if you let them generate out the name, I guess it would just keep the same name. So I guess it'd be not a problem because I don't think it would ever change the name on you. So I think that's maybe an advantage of letting it generate a name because it'll probably be unique without probably be unique without conflict. But yeah, I never noticed that. That's crazy that I never noticed. But hey, there's more than one way to get things done, but sometimes it's better when you have more knowledge. Okay, so we'll go back over here. And so yeah, we described the change set. Oh, let's go accept it. Let's go ahead and do that. So what I'll do is go to the top right corner. We'll hit execute change set. We got two options here. We have roll back all stack resources or preserve successful provision resources. To be honest, I remember this option not existing before. And so I never bothered to ever read this. I always just go and hit execute change set. But let's just take a second here. Roll back all stack resources. So if anything fails, it will roll it back. Preserve successfully provisioned resources. So in this case, if something has worked out, leave it there and only roll back what hasn't failed. Now, this is interesting because it's the first time we're creating a stack. And in my experience, anytime you try to make a stack for the first time, I might be wrong and my information might be outdated, but it will always roll back everything. At least that was my experience. So I don't know. This is something I could play around with to find out, but we only have one resource. So we're creating the stack for the first time. So I'm not going to be able to test those cases, but always think about those questions in your head and then test them so you know for sure. But I'm going to go ahead and hit the execute change set, and it's going to go ahead and you'll see a new event here, which says create in progress. So we'll let it create in progress, and it's going to work here. And so don't just sit here and hope that it's going to finish. Hit that refresh button because they want you to work. Work those fingers. Keep them warm. You ever played like StarCraft and they just like before a game starts, they're like doing this. They're warming up their fingers. That's what you got to do. So we'll see here. And that was pretty fast. So we have create in progress, create complete, And there's our logical name. So if we go to our resources, there it is. Notice that we have a link here. Sometimes services are linked, sometimes they're not. For the most part, they are. But if we click there, we can go see our cluster. So we'll go over here and we'll give it a moment. And so here is our cluster and it has nothing in it. So we've accomplished this step so far. Maybe it might be worth changing the name to see what that replace looks like. If people don't mind. Yeah, folks, you don't mind if we go try to do a replace? Okay. So let's go here and let's go back what Rohini was saying, that there was ones where it would cause a replace. And so one would be the cluster name. I'm going to go over here and we're going to go back into our template. And by the way, if you're able to do this and get the cluster up, give me a +2. I want to see that in the chat that you have a +2 and you're able to successfully deploy your cluster. Okay. And what I'm going to do here is go to the next one. I think we have to do properties. Yeah, properties. And we'll go here and we'll indent. And then I'll say here, my cluster. I don't remember what we called the other one. What was the name of the actual cluster? That's a good question. Yeah, so notice it's this my-cluster ECS cluster, etc. So you might not like the name of that. It's up to you what you want to do with that. I've tried really hard to make like clean CloudFormation names, but I gave up on that a long time ago. I don't care anymore. I use all casings all the time, everywhere now. That's what the cloud teaches you. But this one was called ECS cluster. So we have my cluster. Seems people are in good shape. And so what we can do is we can go ahead and deploy that again. Now, remember we said that we just have that one command to deploy. So we can literally run it again and it should work. And so I'll go and hit up here and we will go and attempt a new deploy. And so it's waiting for it to change the set. And so now we'll have to go over to CloudFormation. We'll go to our change sets and we'll take a look into this change set. And then this time it says modify. So here it said, if we go back over here, it would replace it. So, but it says modify, but it will replace it. I don't remember.
See the last thing, it says replacement is true. Like if you go to the
okay, it's over here. I don't know. You know what? Because I do Terraform and other stuff. So sometimes they'll say like, I think they say replace like explicitly over here, but it says modify. So I think we have to really watch out for it over here. So that's important. Okay. So we'll go ahead.
Sometimes even I've seen it to add and then delete like two separate entries rather than just one modify entry, but interesting.
Okay. So I wish I could drag that to the left. No, I can't, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and execute that. And we will say execute change set. And we will watch it again. Hit that refresh button. And so here it says, and notice over here that we have status reasons where it says requested update requires the creation of a new physical resource, hence creating a new one. So it's telling you what it's doing. So it says update in progress, but it's doing a replacement and it's created it. So, and I can just keep hitting refresh and I can see this stuff. Now, we have some messages here, but I'm going to tell you right now, if you want to solve a problem that you cannot figure out that's spitting out here and it's not clear enough, there's one place that makes it super useful for the debug stuff, and that is CloudTrail. So I'm going to go over here and let's go look at CloudTrail and see what we can read, if we can kind of map this stuff up. And so in our event history, we'll go over here and notice we have the change sets. We have create cluster and delete cluster. So if we had an error on the create cluster action, we would go in here and it should tell us more information about the error. Now, we don't have an error right now, but you can go through here and you can kind of see this stuff. So I'm going to hope that I can somehow introduce an error at some point in this bootcamp so you can experience what that would be like. So that's something there. I mean, we could probably do that if we introduce an option we're not supposed to have. So for a cluster, I think you can specify, we saw that the capacity, like what is it, spot or something else. So maybe we can try to see if we can jank it. So let's see here. We have capacity providers, the short name of one or more capacity providers to associate with. So I think that might be something. Yes. Okay. So what I want to do here is I want to see what happens if I introduce something that is not existent. So go here.
Near gate.
Near gate? Yeah.
It's far gate, near gate.
Oh, near gate. Okay, sure.
Sorry.
I mean, hey, that might be that's some
Shala
good
is
naming there.
laughing.
That could be a new service. So we'll say Neargate for sure. And so we'll do that. And what's going to happen if we do that? That's what I'm curious about. It says, I already have enough errors in CloudFormation through Copilot at work. Please no more. Well, I'm not going to say anything about Copilot. Anyway, it's a great service. It does
It does what it says. But
it does what it's supposed to. It's always improving. I mean, I think the thing is like even when I complain about services, I still really like AWS. It's just that, when you use something, it's just so easy to complain about it. But if you really want to hear me complain, we'll do an Azure Bootcamp and I'll be complaining like 100 times more. But it's for different reasons. Okay, so we'll go back over here and we'll go to our stack. And we probably have a change set, right? And notice that it didn't detect a syntax error. So this is the thing, is that if we gave this a string, it would have absolutely said, hey, there's a syntax error. Like this expects an array. That's what it would say. But in here, we gave it something, but it doesn't check the values here. It doesn't do that. And so it does not know at this point that we have given it something wrong. And so it's going to do modify. Let's modify. Notice that it's not replacing the cluster this time. So I kind of want this to say replace over here, but that's me. We'll go here and we'll hit execute change set and we'll see what happens. Notice that the old cluster name shows inactive with strikeout names as well. Yep. Well, I think that for some specific services, I notice for task definitions is that they don't vanish. Like even when you launch an instance, they show around for a bit there. And so, oh, David, thank you so much for the 50. I'm always trying to figure out the currency, but that is a euro. And again, the currency exchange is quite significant. So I can now afford a canoe for my entire family. For my whole family in there. Thank you, David. Greatly appreciate your support. So what we'll do here is we'll give this a refresh. And notice that now we have an error. It says resource handler return message, invalid request provided. The specified capacitor provided was not found. Specify a valid capacitor, try again. Now this error is pretty clear to me, but sometimes you do get errors that are not clear. And sometimes you get additional information. And cake for the kids, yes. So, but we'll go over here, and what we'll do is we'll take a look at the event history again, because I'm just trying to see if we can see more additional information and try to get you in the mindset that if you run into a problem with CloudFormation, run over to CloudTrail. It's super useful. And so we'll give this a refresh, and notice that it says create cluster and delete it. It deleted it because it failed, right? So we'll go here. And we'll go into the create cluster and we'll see if we can see if that error is in there. So that's what I'm looking for, is that error. And so I'm going up here. I don't see it. We'll go back over here. Oh, let's give this a refresh. Sorry.
What cluster capacity provide? Is that the one?
Oh, this one here maybe? Yes. Because it was a modify. It wasn't a create. You're right. I think I was looking at an old one. I didn't refresh. So we'll go, here it is. So error message, the specified error capacity was not provided, specify a valid cluster. So again, the error is not complex here, but I promise you there are error messages that are more verbose and sometimes solve your answer. Lots of times when you go to AWS support, they'll go, did you go over to CloudTrail and read what's over there? I learned that. That's how I learned it, because I did it so many times. And I'm like, wait, there's a pattern here. So that's how we know, but we'll go back over here. And our resource is still there, I believe, right? If we go over to ECS.
Yeah, this is super helpful. I did not go into CloudTrail when I had errors, so
I love this as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hours with support. Well, I mean, like support was my teacher, basically. I just kept asking them things forever. But you have to have a lot of patience. Sometimes they're super fast, and it just depends, I think, on your time zone, what service it is, lots of factors. But I greatly appreciate that you can pay for it. So I know not all of our boot campers can afford it, but if you do end up working for a company, just ask if they have paid support and leverage it for learning. It's super useful. Because they'll help you debug it till you fix it, basically.
I was managing 3 time zones, by the way, because whenever I used to come, I knew the site before me had not managed anything about CloudFormation. I think it was one of those neglected kids. And then I knew the one after me is also good. So I used to literally get overwhelmed because I was doing a lot of CloudFormation. But hey, it was fun. It was actually fun. And there's a question actually in the chat. I think you can use AWS CloudFormation validate template. Isn't and help me, Andrew, because I'm still trying to wrap my head. Isn't validate template the same thing going to happen? That it's going to check for if it is a string or a list, but not necessarily the values
That's
that it has
I
given.
believe that's right, and we can give it a go. So there is an endpoint for that, and basically, I think all it's doing is linting. So it's just linting for syntax errors. But we can go and test it out, and that's something that is worth our time. So we will go to the AWS CLI and see what options we have. And also be nice to your support folks because they're dealing with a lot of things there. So just be as nice, and also help being nice gets you the best help too. They'll give you the best help anyway, but I'm just saying like be super nice to your support. It's a hard job. We'll go down here and we're gonna see we're looking for CloudFormation, right? So CloudFormation, we're at Access Analyzer right now, or we're somewhere. We're in the AWS command here. Let's go and find CloudFormation here.
Yeah.
And in here, we have the validate is what we're looking for. Here it is.
Yeah.
So we'll go here. It says validate a specified template. It first checks if the template is valid JSON. If it isn't, CloudFormation checks if the template is valid YAML. If both checks fails, CloudFormation returns a valid error. So it says checks for the template if it's valid. So it's doing syntax changes. That's how I'm interpreting it. But I think that I don't know if it'll do local. It might want it for in a bucket. And so this is maybe why I might not use it, but it says structure containing the template. Okay, so we can do it local. It might be size dependent. Some things are like if it's over a certain size, they won't do it. I think actually that's for CloudFormation. If it's a certain size, you have to have it in S3. I just forget. So what we'll do is we'll go over here. Let's just see if ChatGPT can generate out the command for fun. So
make it work.
Yeah. Write an AWS, and I'll actually give it the path too to see if it does it. Because you never know when this stuff will become important. So any opportunity that we have to do this, I want to do that. So we'll go here and say, write an AWS CLI command to validate the CloudFormation template at this location on local machine. Oh, that's not the path. We'll go back over here. We'll copy that. We will paste it in. And we will see what it generates out. Oh, that was fast. And so, yeah, I believe that's the command that we want. Oh, it's that simple. Okay, so let's give it a go. I know you folks have to, here, I'll paste it in the chat. I know you don't want to have to figure out how to type that or hunt it down. So I'll paste that in the chat there, and hopefully it shows up well. So we have AWS CloudFormation valid template, and I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And let's see what it does.
Nice.
And oh yeah, so there's no errors, right? So let's go introduce an error and see what happens. I guess because I was thinking like this is wrong, but I'm going to go ahead and just take this out. That's clearly wrong. And then we'll see what it says. So when calling the validation error operation, the template format error YAML was not well formatted line 9. Now we can use this tool, and it's fine that it's a service. But I think that there's a CLI tool that does the exact same thing.
CFN lint.
Okay, so let's go over and find out how to install that. CFN lint, GitHub, and we'll go over here. There's probably a plugin in VS Code, but for this,
yeah, the GitHub action or something as well, I think.
So it's just a pip install. Well, we can try also VS Code for fun. I actually don't do it that often, but I almost have a feeling that there's a CFN lint here. CloudFormation. The marketplace here isn't the Microsoft one; it's the VSX Open because it is the open source one. So it might not show it up there, but I'm almost certain that I remember there being a CloudFormation one.
Okay.
So for the time being, we'll just install the manual one. This is actually how I always do it, so it's not a big deal, and we will be using it. So this one's pip install lint, CFN lint. So that sounds good to me. So I'll go back over here and I will paste that in. I'll give the command to the folks down below here as well. Do you use any prompts for getting better responses from ChatGPT? Well, you can write prompts to write you prompts, right? And actually, I'm serious. When I was trying to generate out the characters for like the Babylon 5, what you do is you tell it, like you say like write. I'm sure this can be applied to cloud, but you say, so I said, write 10 characters from Babylon 5 and describe their outfits. And then what you do is you give them like, here's the format of a prompt for ChatGPT. Now go write them out for me. So, this is where it's like you're using AI to help with the prompt creation. And so there's probably a way to do that, but whatever the meta is, I'm not there yet. So,
so not there yet to become a prompt engineer, huh?
Yeah.
Not yet.
Not yet, no. But we're getting there. So, and I haven't touched Auto GPT yet, so that would be interesting. But oh right. So we installed CFN Lint, I think. So we'll type in CFN Lint and see if it is installed. And it spit something back, so it must be working. There are a bunch of options, but I don't think it's that complicated. I think it's just CFN Lint. And I'll have to zoom out here to see what the options are. I think you just pass it in, right?
Yeah. -T and then template. That's it.
-T? Oh,
Yeah.
you're right. Okay. So we'll zoom this back up. And I'll just type clear here, and I'll make this a little bit easier to see. And we'll type in CFN Lint. And then we need that full path. So that path is workspaces, AWS Bootcamp Credder. Then we'll have
AWS CFN template.
And so now it didn't print out any errors, but there's definitely, do we still have, oh, I took it out. So I'll reintroduce the error. And we'll hit up. And so it does the same thing. Did not expect to find key, line 936. And so that's that issue there. Now remember, we're using YAML, and so YAML, you could also do this, right? We'll change this back. This will make a list in. I was working on a YAML course and I didn't finish. I always overdo everything. I make a YAML course. And I'm like, well, if you teach YAML, you got to teach YQ, and if you teach that, I don't know if anyone else has a problem. Like then I ended up like writing for every programming language possible for cloud, and I'm just like, what am I doing? But at some point, I'll have a YAML course. Not that they're that hard, but
did you mean to say it Faragate or?
No, I just dyslexic. I can't see my spelling mistakes, so we'll take that out there. That's why I need pair programming. It saves you so much time. I usually have Bako to help me out. So, we have yeah. So did not expect to find the key. So now the nice thing is that we can probably work this into our template. I think that's what I do previously here. So if we find this repo here, where did it go? I'll just go find it again. So this is going to be teacher seat. Go to repositories. I do this all the time in my repo. So this would be a cluster. And if I go into my bin directory, into my deploy, I usually like to lint the files before I do that. So do I do that here? I do. I have one here where I do CFN lint. Oh, and it looks like you can just pass without even the -T. You can do it as well.
Okay.
So I wasn't sure. I don't remember, but so that could be something that we do. And the idea is that we have that set E, and it fails here, it won't go to the next step. So let's go do that and make it so we're building it in. So here we would do CFN lint, and we'll do CFN path. Now remember that we're not installing this globally for our stuff. So if we try to use this in the future, that'll be a problem. We'll go over to our git pod YAML here, and we'll go up, and I'll say CFN. We could also do it in, we could also install it in here. I'm going to put it in here though. And we'll say before, and this will be pip install lint. This. We could also cd into the appropriate directory. No, we'll leave it alone. It's fine. And so that will install it in the future for us. Now, there are other CFN tools.
Yeah, there's something like CFN Guard. And I think there are a couple more.
Is there one like named after a cat?
CloudFormation Guard. Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Passcat. What does it do? I don't even know. I just remember there's one named after a cat. Is a tool that tests CloudFormation templates. It deploys your CloudFormation templates in multiple regions and generates a report with a pass and fail for each region. Well, that sounds pretty good. You can specify the regions for multiple AZs you want to include to the test and pass the parameter values. TaskCat is implemented as Python class to import. So, there obviously is some intermediate stuff. It depends on the level of configuration, but this is something, who'd love this? Adrian. Adrian, I bet, just uses the service because of it, because there's a cat in there. But I'm more of a dog person. Don't tell him. But sorry, I am. I'm more of a dog person. But so over here we have like test cat test run. So the CLI self-documenting here. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure. Is this? Oh, is it like a testing library? Is that what it is? Interesting. So yeah, I just haven't really used it. I know it exists, but something I always want to use is CFN Guard. So maybe we can play around with that for fun. And so let's go take a look at this because this is a policy as code, right? Yeah. So policy as code. And that's the idea is that policy as code is when you expect resources to be a configured way. And when they're not configured that way, it's like, hey, you're not meeting your policy requirements. Does that sound right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So open source general purpose policies code evaluation tool. It provides developers with a simple use a DSL to do that. So we'll scroll on down here. And let's see if we can find any examples. I'm just checking for our time. We're doing fine for time. And let's see what we can get. So I just want an example of one. Okay, let's see if ChatGPT will write me some. So write me policy as code for CFN Guard for an ECS cluster. I mean, it probably wants to know things like, what do you want to check for policy as code? Well, let's just see what it does and see if it can help us. And I wrote it in this Balenciaga one, but that's totally fine. Because it remembers the context of whatever it is. So if it starts spitting out Balenciaga in here, we'll know, right? Here's an example policy for CF Guard to enforce security compliance. I'm going to just tell you, I don't know what these files look like. So we could be doing the wrong thing in here. But it says we have the cluster configuration. We're setting up rules. That makes sense. Whether logging is enabled, because that might be something, if you are in an organization and you care about things are being logged for governance reasons, like you need to have audit trails and things like that, you want to make sure that it's enabled. So it says enable logging on the cluster. So this one is specific to EC2 instances. We're using Fargate, so this is not going to apply to us for this because there is no EC2. But then we have auto scaling enabled. So this is enable service to allow auto scaling on the cluster. You can enable this. I don't know if it's at the service level when you're doing Fargate, so I'm not 100% sure if that makes sense either. This might be EC2. The problem is I said ECS cluster. I should have said Fargate. Public access. Again, this is, so you know what? My prompt is no good. So change the policy as code to be for an ECS cluster for Fargate. Let's see if it can do that. And I'll take your American dollars. Again, American dollars are still considerably more than our Canadian dollars. So, yeah, I appreciate the 10 USD. Thank you, Shala. And so we'll go down below here and we'll see what we got. And all that money just goes to diapers, right? Like, I don't get to enjoy that money. My wife
that
goes,
makes it even better.
No, they gave you money? And I was like, yeah, I gotta go buy something. She said, no, those are going to diapers.
That's
like,
even better. Who doesn't want to support diapers?
Or it's gonna go to groceries where they like we buy kids, like, and all the food's gonna end up on the floor anyway. So it's like, oh, we'll buy groceries, and then it'll be like you give your kids like 10 things, it all goes on the floor every single time. That's my life. But so we have the ECS cluster configuration, and so this actually looks better. So we have task definition encryption, that looks good. Network mode, ensure it's using AWS VPC mode. That actually is something that, well, it has to use that. I don't think you can do it without it. But this looks better. So I think I want to take this one for fun. And we'll put these rules somewhere. So we'll go here and I'll just put it here and I'll just say ECS rules, ECS hard rules. What was that? YAML or JSON? JSON, I believe. And we'll go and paste this in here.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure about this rule here. I mean, it's good, but I'm just going to take this out for now. I don't know if we want to have our task definitions in the cluster, because that might be something we want to have a bit more flexibility around. But for the network mode, that's definitely something we want set. And then the execution role, we'll do that. I'm not going to say that we're going to be able to observe any of these policies code things. And so it says network mode. That looks good. Oh, but this is the task definition file as well. Okay, so this is all for task definitions. I suppose we can make a task definition and then just move it into another template later. So what I'm going to do is, I guess folks need this because they're not going to be able to use. Why is this like this? Expected a JSON object. Oh, maybe this isn't a JSON file. What format is this file, you think?
Is it YAML?
Is it
YAML with the JSON? What?
Oh, they say that it's guard.
Oh.
Because it is a DSL, so the DSL could be its own language.
Makes sense.
Okay.
That makes sense.
And the nice thing is now I can take the word guard out of here. And this is actually more for task definition. So we'll say task definition guard file. And you know what? I guess all those rules were actually kind of okay. So I'll actually bring them back because now we're really just doing this for a I spelled it wrong there, Bako? Okay. And so we'll go here and we'll fix this. It looks right to me. Is that really wrong? G-U-A-R-D?
G-A-U-R-D, right?
U-A-R-D. Oh, yeah, I had it. Guard.
Guard.
I'm telling you, I'm dyslexic. I really can't read anything. Like, I
don't know if you know, I did the same.
You know, like, I don't know if you know, like, this company, what is it called? How would you pronounce this company's name?
Akamai.
Okay.
Right.
Yes. You know how I say it? I always thought it was
because
Akami.
I've heard it.
Well, yeah, I would say Akami. I'm like, does it make any sense? It's like I don't even read the middle of the word.
So I learn most of the times by reading, so my pronunciations are bad too. So I have to hear someone say it many times, then I recollect like, okay, this is how it is pronounced. So.
I don't know how to say it, but I know how to do it. That's the thing.
That's important.
So we have our guard file here, and let's go take a look here and see how we run it. So it looks like we do CFN Guard. Again, I've never used this tool before, so it's always fun to use. Bako is always on alert. Yeah, yes. I forgot. But anyway, so here there is some way to run it. I'm not really seeing the flags. I guess the easiest way is to just start running it, but this uses cargo. Oh, it's a Rust. Hey, I said we were going to use Rust in this project at some point. Here's our Rust project.
And we found it.
So we'll go ahead and we'll do cargo, and we'll go back over to our gitpod YAML file, and we'll go ahead and paste. And so we have that for later. And so we're installing cargo. There is no cargo, or not cargo. There's no Rust Lambda yet, but I know you can make a custom runtime, but I don't know. Rohini, do you have any interest in Rust? Do you think it's cool, or it's
a new cool tool? Because of the sustainability thing, but I don't know how to code in Rust. But yes, because of the sustainability, I know a lot of folks inside AWS, a lot of service teams also use Rust. So yes, why not?
Yeah, and Bako's always here. I feel like we should represent him like in the stream, like as like a silhouette, like in the corner or something. And if he wants to say something, he can like put up his finger or something there. But I always try to think of him like the banker from Deal or No Deal. So I'm not sure if folks remember that show, but it's like the banker, Deal or No Deal, and the banker, they always call him and ask for the deal. Like, so he's a silhouette sitting in a chair, and they always have to close the deals. That's how Bako is. But if you want to meet Bako, regardless if he wants to meet you, If you come to the AWS Toronto Summit, he will be there.
Yes,
Okay.
I'll be there as well. I'm just so excited for that.
But so we'll go back over here and we'll see how it's building. Sometimes this stuff takes some time, so we'll have to wait a little while here. But while you folks are waiting, I think you probably want that file. No one's been complaining about it, but I will go ahead and grab it for you. I think this file is okay. I don't think we're going to run into any issues, but I'll go ahead and grab this. And I'm just going to go just.github.com for now. Of course, this will end up being in the code repository later on. So if you don't know where this is, you'll be able to find it in week 10 again. But we'll go here and what did I name this file? This was called
Task
Guard.
definition.
Guard. Word. We'll go here and we'll make this public. I always mean to make these public, but
So while you're doing that, can I just clarify a couple of things? Like,
go for it.
so one is the CloudFormation is just like you just calling APIs in the backend, right? And those APIs could be of different services in the backend. So when CFN lint or CFN validate, these commands are just checking for the format of the JSON and the YAML files. The reason being that CloudFormation is talking to so many services in the backend, and those services could have different errors in their services. So because I've seen CloudFormation grow through these years, CloudFormation just gets that error and actually pastes it for you in CloudFormation, tells you this is why that service creation failed. So when you're doing CFN validate or CFN lint, they're not going to be able to predict what that third party service or whatever AWS service or custom service that you're building that is going to generate the error. So that's why when you're doing validate and CFN lint, it's going to help you with CloudFormation. So those are helpful as well, because you don't want to run through entire like 10 minutes and get an error. Oh, the CFN template, like this is invalid. So do that and then use tools like CFN Guard, which are going to help you set those policies. So for example, I'm in an organization where everyone, whoever creates an S3 bucket, that S3 bucket has to be private. Like I'm not going to allow anyone to create public S3 buckets. So I'm going to set a policy, and anyone who's using CloudFormation and deploying this policy should automatically be running on those policies and say, hey, you are creating a CloudFormation template with an S3 bucket that is public. This is not going to be allowed and this is going to be stopped. So there are different places where these different tools come into place. You don't have to use all of them, but depends on what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve. And I loved your CloudTrail hack, because CloudTrail is everywhere. It's talking to everyone. So CloudTrail knows the error of what that service is throwing. And sometimes CloudFormation may not be able to render that message, because I've been through support cases where it says an internal error happened, and then it's difficult. Like as a support engineer, I'll be like, hey, go look at CloudTrail. But we don't think about services like APIs, right? So whenever you're talking to AWS and building CloudFormation, think about these as APIs, and CloudFormation is just a place where you're defining it and doing your CRUD operations, but it's still a service API that it's calling. So yeah.
And that's, I think, the most important thing that really helped me learn cloud was when you take an API first mindset to it, because really that's what these are. They're like APIs, and then the console second to it. And
Exactly.
so, I think we said that earlier in the bootcamp, but that's why I try to do as much API driven stuff as possible. I keep pulling up these pages, because then it starts to click a lot more about all the components that are there and how they're operating. And then you see the relation between CloudFormation, SDK, all this other stuff. So I went over here. I just said, how do I use this stuff? I got the two files. How do I do it? And so it's saying here that first we generate out something called a rule set. Okay. And then it says to then do a check. So again, never done this before, but I'm going to copy these and I'm going to run them first. And if it works, I'm going to paste in the links over here. Is there a word disallow? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Like, or if you're asking, is that like a proper word? Yeah, it's a proper word. Disallow is, yep. And so we'll go here. It's the opposite of allow, disallow. I mean, you think it'd be deny, but I guess disallow works as well. I don't know. But don't ask me for words. I'm not good for that kind of stuff. But anyway, this says CFN Guard generate. So I'll do that. I'll do what it wants. And did it work? Found argument generate wasn't expected or isn't valid in this context. Oh, come on, ChatGPT. I thought you were like amazing. And so I was just hoping that would just work, unless I introduced a mistake. Generate. Well, let's go back to the documentation. And this is just me being lazy, not wanting to read stuff. But I think it'd be really cool to get this to work. So down below, there's no generate option. But we do have a rule gen. Auto-generate rules from an existing JSON YAML format. It currently works with only CloudFormation templates. Oh, so maybe we could have generated the guard file and not have to, maybe we didn't have to create it manually. So let's go ahead and let's try to see what happens if we do that, the rule gen here. Because now I'm really curious. So we'll go here. Because also ChatGPT might be referring to an older one, but somebody did mention that there is a CFN Guard in Python, and that syntax could be slightly different. Just because they're the same doesn't necessarily mean they work the same way. But what we'll do is we'll go over here, and I'm going to grab rule gen here. And it also looked like there was a version change at some point. So maybe we're seeing version 1.0 in ChatGPT, and this is version 2.0. Happens to me all the time. CFN Guard. So we'll type in CFN Guard here. And I'll paste in rule gen here. I don't know what it needs, so I'm going to hope it tells me what to do. So I guess we want our template. So we'll say template, and then we'll autocomplete it. So I'll do workspace. And yeah, I realize that we're not really building out our template, but I just think that these additional services around CloudFormation are super useful, and they get overlooked, whereas a lot of other CloudFormation examples just start jumping in and start writing code without all these other utilities. So I think if we have this opportunity to utilize these, it'll be great for our learning down the road here. And so we have this here. I'm going to hit enter. And what it did is it generated out something. So, okay, that's something. I guess the thing is right now we don't have a task definition file. So the only thing that it could generate out would be for this. And this must be the DSL for version 2.0. So I think that's what this is generating out. So I'm going to make a new file here. I'm going to just call this ECS cluster. I now don't trust the old one from ChatGPT. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this out. So maybe this is something that we can do. We can generate it out, like write CloudFormation, generate a rules file, and keep updating it to get our policies in place. So we'll go ahead and copy this here. And then we'll go into this file. I'm just going to assume that it's called guard. And then we'll take a look at the syntax. And so I'll just zoom out a little bit here. So it says, let ECS cluster resources equals this. And then it's saying resources, which is in our CloudFormation template. It looks like it's actually like a selecting language here. We go over here for a second to our CloudFormation template. So it says resources. That's resources over here. Again, I've never done this before. I'm just figuring it out as we go. Period asterisk. So probably search across everything, look at the type and see that it matches the cluster, right? And then here it says make a rule for this one here. So when this is not empty and the capacity providers is far gain stuff. So it seems like a more robust language than the last one we just saw. So maybe that's why 2.0 moved there, so they can search across anything. But it's something. Don't know how it works. But let's go ahead and see if we can do a guard against that. Or validate, whatever it's called. So we'll go back over to somewhere. Where did it go? I don't know. I got too many tabs. I apologize. And CFN Lint. CFN Guard. Where'd you go, CFN Guard? Well, we'll look it up again. CFN Guard. GitHub. Oh, there was an Office reference? I must have missed it.
Someone wrote about why use many words when little words do the trick.
Oh, okay.
That's such a Kevin reference.
And so we got features of, where is the commands? We just saw them here a moment ago. Here. And so I think it's just validate. So let's just see if that will work. So we'll just type in CNF validate and see, or CFN Guard. Validate.
And yeah, it should work.
Yes. Well, I mean, we need to.
It did work, right? No.
Well, I didn't specify anything for it, right? So I think that it needs to be told a couple things like where stuff is. So I really wish that this was a little, I mean, it's there. It's just sometimes you have to read more and sometimes you don't want to, you know what I mean? It's just me. And so validate command is used when you need to access compliance or security posture as a defined as a set policy against the incoming JSON YAML document. So guard is definitely what it's supposed to be called. Oh, here's an example. So we
Minus
have
R.
-R. What would -R do, and how would it know where the CloudFormation template is?
So there is -R and -T. Interesting. The one below it.
Well, maybe the way it works is that it just picks up template.yaml. So some folks, the default name template.yaml is a convention, and some things expect to look for that. So I'm thinking probably what will happen is if we cd into this directory and then run that command from there, it'll pick up the template file. Rohini, you're probably right. We probably would give the -T flag for it. But just let's see what happens if we go into that directory there. So I'm going to do that and go. And actually, they're both in there, so it'll be easier to run it from there. And so, as I said, it would be CFN Guard -R, and then we'll try the ECS cluster guard. And I'm assuming it's going to pick up the template YAML from there. Oh, I got to put the word validate in front of it. Sorry. But validate, and I apologize for the small screen. I will increase it. Enter. What do we get? It's thinking. It must be doing something, right? I don't know how long this takes. I've never ran it before. And it's not running. Okay, so I would say, oh, sorry, you thought it was almost going to work there? I should go again?
No, I was just keeping my fingers crossed for you.
Okay. and so I'm not sure what the problem is, but I'm not really worried about it because I know I can figure this out later. I will go get Baco to figure it out. And then I will say that I figured it out, and we'll be in good shape. So for the time being, we'll pause on the CFN Guard, and we'll just take a look at some other things here that is interesting for CloudFormation. So we do have this base template here. And so, there's a lot of things we can do. I haven't used stack sets yet. Rohini, have you touched stack sets yet? Or?
I haven't used them because I never had the need to, honestly, in my testing. But yeah, stack sets are interesting. When you were reading about this other tool that you were mentioning that would do the same thing, I did the task cat. It reminded me of stack sets because stack sets are also essentially for that, for doing multi-account, multi-region deployments of the same template. So, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that, stack sets make it easier to basically define a stack and then deploy in other places, right? And regions and possibly other accounts?
Yes.
It can do multiple accounts?
Yes.
And so I guess it's just a really easy way to share projects in there. I don't know, I wonder how the designer's doing. I always wonder if they're going to update this soon. I think there's talks about it, but sometimes like the designer's kind of fun, but I don't know if we've ever got much useful stuff out of there. But it is really nice for converting your JSON or YAML over.
I know, I have used it for that. Exactly, that's what I've been using it for, converting my template. It does
why I'm in here.
sometimes, but yes, does a fair job.
But like you can go in here, and if we go to, I think, template, and then I'll go to YAML here. I can paste this in here, and sometimes that's useful for, if I can't figure out how to do something in a certain way, like JSON or YAML, I'll put the JSON equivalent in it, and I'll switch over to YAML, and then it'll give it for me, right?
Exactly.
So that's something that is Baco support. I also need Baco support. Well, only I got to deal with Baco, and Baco's already tired of dealing with me, so.
I used Application Composer, which was a very fairly new service. But I found it more intuitive, although it's just supporting serverless right now. But I found it more intuitive where you can just drag and drop and it creates a template for you. And then you can do whatever you want with those templates. Or you can visualize your already created templates.
I'm a really large fan of the App Composer team. They used to be called Stackery. And so I know the service is still in the works, but I really do like the idea of a visual builder to get people on board. This one, you can do some stuff in here. I would love to see App Composer take over the service at some point.
Yeah.
But you can switch between it. If you go to the components, it shows you the individual components, but sometimes it doesn't always do exactly what you want. So notice, like, I lost my code over here, but it's still over here. So just be aware of that. Yeah. Designer's out of date, hit refresh. And you can kind of drag things out here. It does show the cluster. So sometimes if you want to know if it's valid, you put it in here and then you refresh. And if your stuff shows up here, Not to say this visualization is that useful, but if your stuff shows up here, you can do stuff here. But you can go around here and play around with it. I haven't really had any success, but it'd be interesting to like make a challenge. Like your challenge is to make a whole whatever, but only using the designer. I would love to see somebody do that. Not because it makes sense to do, but just because you could do it. But if we go here, there are things like here, like task definition. I guess another thing that would be great about this is that if you're looking for samples for CloudFormation templates, because maybe it would show some of the default ones here. So I'm just wondering, like we go to the YAML here, and I want to drop one out here. So we'll go here and we'll click on this. Can I drag it out? Ah, look at that. And so now we have a task definition file. Well, what else can we do with it? Much depends on this. So it can't do too much, but you know what? It is nice that you can drag that out and get the base definitions, but you know, it just can't really do that much. Yeah, so it's pretty limited, but there is that as a means here. It also has the validate template up here as well, so you can do that. Another thing is that if you have your template and you just want to upload, you can also upload or create your stacks here. So I know I've played with this tool quite a bit, but we'll go back over here to the beginning. Over here. Now, you know, I said earlier that you usually do want to upload your template before you use it. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just get that part of my pipeline. I think Cloud Deploy actually automatically does that. Let me go take a look here. I think it does. I think there's a case where you can get it to do it. But let's go look at S3 and see if there's any kind of additional CloudFormation buckets that are kicking around, because there could be. And by the way, folks, you know, we're just playing around with CloudFormation, trying to squeeze any additional knowledge that we wouldn't normally do when we do the standard stuff. Because the other stuff we do after this is just boring. Let's go write CloudFormation code. So I'm trying to get you anything that's like strategic that you can add for CloudFormation. But if we go here, I'm just trying to see if there's any new buckets here. So I don't see any new buckets, but I definitely know. I'm pretty certain that you can have code deploy CloudFormation, go into a bucket with the deploy command, CloudFormation AWS deploy.
Yes.
At least I think that. So go down here. So, I mean, you can see there's the S3 prefix. So clearly it's talking about the bucket stuff. Oh, right here, S3 bucket. And so, you know, this might be something that you want to do. The name of the S3 bucket where the command uploads your CloudFormation. This is required for deployments of template sizes greater than 51,200 bytes. And, you know, a good reason why you'd also want them there is that you can go back in your history and see the changes over time. I guess in a sense, they are also in CloudFormation, but, you know, sometimes when you tear down those stacks, you might not be able to find them again. So let's go take a look and see if we can go ahead and add ourselves a custom bucket. So we'll go over here. And so this is a case where we have a resource where we might not necessarily want it managed by CloudFormation. So we need a bucket for CNF, but then we'd have to write our own. Like, let's say we want to do everything CloudFormation. I think some people get obsessed and they think everything has to be CloudFormation. But, you know, like this bucket that like we need an artifact bucket for our CloudFormation templates. You don't have to also put that in CloudFormation. You can just make a bucket.
True.
So, but Rohini, do you like to do 100% CloudFormation or what's your feeling on that?
I'm okay with doing CloudFormation. Yeah.
Okay. So
there's a question, by the way. Do you want to answer that question?
Oh, sorry. Which one?
The CloudFormation needs internet. Oh, this one I'm not sure because I'm not a Terraform person.
Well, curious to know how the TF state file management happens in the CloudFormation. Well, first of all, TF is Terraform, right? And so CloudFormation does not manage Terraform states whatsoever, but you can store them in S3 buckets. That is an option that you can do. But usually you want to use a managed service like Terraform Cloud, M0, or the other one, Spacelift, right? I'm partial to M0. Terraform Cloud is really good, but M0 can handle more stuff. What other one here we say, why does CloudFormation need internet connectivity when we do CFN init, CFN H up? Sorry?
So those are like helper scripts, right? So those are given in the user data or metadata of EC2 instances. And then those run whatever you have to run. Now, why you need internet is because CFN init is actually, if you see the command that it calls a CLI command of AWS CFN update signal or something like that. So that actually command needs internet, because CloudFormation, if you think, is a service which is on the internet, which is a public facing service. Your EC2 instance is sitting in your private VPC. Now you could say that it's all in AWS and it should have a back channel to CloudFormation, but I don't think we have, or maybe I've not tested this out, but can you create a VPC endpoint and let it go from the backend? But if you think from a different perspective, your EC2 instance is in your control, is in your VPC, and you need to give it some kind of internet access, would be via an NAT gateway to go and talk to CloudFormation, which is actually sitting outside on an internet-facing API. So you need to have internet for it to go and get that access out. But I've never tried with VPN endpoint. Andrew, if you have, let us know.
Nope. Well, I mean, I've done lots of things, but in this case, I'm not sure about this edge case. And so they're just clarifying about the S3 thing I mentioned about Terraform. So not for the Terraform, but CloudFormation, the state itself, you never have access to that data. It is managed by AWS. It's in a vault. AWS can't touch it. I don't know, but the point is that AWS manages it, and it's just not something that you can extract out or manage in any way. And I like that. Some folks, for some reason, might want to have the external state. I don't know why. I don't think you need that file. Like, I guess, like, if you had it, you could analyze what the state of your file is to be, but you really don't want to have that responsibility, and AWS takes care of that responsibility for you. So I like that they do that.
It's a managed service. AWS will take care. So, for example, when I used to say, right, like update rollback failed or something, like some kind of states where you initially, now you can do some activities to actually resolve it. But when there were no possibilities for customers to do anything, customers will raise a support ticket. As a support engineer, I would have to raise a ticket to the service team. And then service teams would have to raise a change management request to actually get that stack unrolled and remove that error, and so that the customer can actually rerun the right CloudFormation template. So yes, it's like even support engineers, we don't have access to it. The service teams, there are few folks on the service team who are on call. They might have to write a change management request, get it removed, and then change it. So there's lots of folks who have access, who don't have access to it, and there are only few folks who have access to it.
Bako's talking to me, and he's like, he just told me that there's a bird flying around in his basement. So, and it's not like an indoor bird that he owns; it's an outdoor bird that made it into his basement. So, I don't know what to do now. Without Bako, I can't. I'm just kidding. I can handle this stuff, but I just thought it was funny that he told me that. I'm gonna make a bucket called CNF Artifacts. That's the name I like. I might not be able to name it that because these are like domain names. You don't always get. By the way, I just found out. I was looking up cloud.camp and I wanted to buy that domain, and I'll never get it because you know who owns cloud.camp? Amazon. So they're never gonna give that to me. It doesn't matter how hard I work, but I don't know. Maybe if I'm there and I see the CTO, I'll be like, "Hey, do you think I could get that domain?" But they'll never give it to me. But I thought that was interesting. So. But anyway, so it'd be a nice domain, cloud.camp, but that's all right. CFN Artifact. Hey, if I was Amazon, anything that had cloud in the name, I'd buy up right in a second. But we have CFN Artifacts, and we'll go down below. And so one consideration I had is like, if we're going to have these files in here, could there be any kind of sensitive data in the files? Should this be? I mean, I think it's like there's no reason never to encrypt your bucket, but like, and can you even not have it encrypted anymore? I guess you could, but why would you? I never asked the question, why would you not want your bucket encrypted? But so just be aware that when you create that CloudFormation template, if you put something in there that's sensitive, then it would end up in this S3 bucket. That could be a cause for concern, but I don't think there's anything I can think of that would be an issue. So we'll go here and I'll create this bucket. I don't think I have to turn on versioning or anything weird for it, but and was I able to did I get that name? CNF? Did I really get that name? Wow. Oh, because I'm in CA Central 1. No, but it's global, right? If I make it anywhere, there's no bucket named CFN Artifacts. I'm the first one to name it. Did I make a spelling mistake? No, I guess I got it.
Yeah.
I'll never delete that bucket. It's mine for life. So folks, just name the bucket something, CFN artifacts, hyphen, a random number, whatever you want it to be, because we're going to have a bucket there. I assume it has to be the same region. I don't know. It might not matter, but I made mine CA Central 1. I'm deploying my templates in CA Central 1, so just be aware there because sometimes it might mess with you, the options for changing stuff. And just so you know, we got 10 more minutes here, but I would like to see if we can try to change our deploy script to use a bucket. So I'll just go here. I'm going to say S3 bucket, and mine is called, actually, what format do you think it's going to want? The name of the S3 bucket doesn't say, like, there's like S3, there's like an ARN, it could be the address. I think it's just the bucket name. So I'm going to do artifacts. And we'll make some kind of change to our template. So I'm going to go back to our template here, my template 1 here. And I'm going to go ahead and attempt this deploy. And I just want to see if it goes into that folder. And we will try to get guard working for fun. I'll just run this manually. So it's bin. CFN deploy. And we have an error here about file not found CFN Guard path. Did I delete something out here? Let's go back over here for a moment. It's right here. Zoom out here for a second. 1 of 1. If anyone notices my mistake. Template file not found, CFN path. Sorry?
Why is it saying CFN? Oh, I think it's not replacing your environment variable.
Interesting. We'll go over here. Well, it says that it doesn't. Let's just follow the path here. Well, I'm going to echo this out. Because maybe it has to do with where I am or something like that. The workspace, CRUD, AWS CFN template, YAML. Well, it seems right to me.
Yeah, it's not replacing it, I think. I think it doesn't understand that it's an environment variable and it needs to replace. Or there could be a different format for it, like
interesting.
I'm seeing a few call outs for $sign and line 6.
We have a dollar.
Yeah.
Oh, right here, 7. For the linting.
Thank you. See?
This is why we live stream. It's not because I just want you to catch my code problems here. This is all for my work, by the way. Did I tell you that?
That's crazy. So while this is happening, I got a question actually on LinkedIn.
Sure.
We missed a question in the chat. Sure. Like, how are we deploying it to multiple regions at the same time? For example, people want to have a QA or a dev environment and a production environment in different regions. How would you do that with CloudFormation? Obviously, we talked about stack sets, but then how do you differentiate, and anything more you want to add to that?
I mean, stack sets is, I was doing this before stack sets. So basically you'd have your CloudFormation template and you can load in your parameters and you'd have different parameter files. Now, I actually, for our architecture, we actually do that in one of our things here. I actually have an example. Like, it's actually a complex example. So you notice I showed you WeCloud data earlier. So like Baco and I were the ones that built out their learning platform initially. And at one point, our learning platforms were similar. And we had to manage not only different versions of environments, but also totally different AWS accounts. And so we had this way of loading in stuff differently. I don't know if it'll show up in here, but I can see if I can find it. Teacher seat. I'll just see if I can find something like, a lot of these are build or infrastructure, maybe. Trying to think what it'd be. Pipeline, CI/CD. I'm trying to remember the name of the repos. CI/CD. Development pipeline. It could be that. And so in our CloudFormation file, It's not here. It's probably in the bin file. Let's go into the bin file here. Deploy. So what I did was we created a in our bash script. We created a way to say like what you'll specify is the namespace, and the namespace is just a folder which contains configuration files. And then what we did is we have this configure.tom. And so the idea is that this configuration toml file, I wrote this thing called CFN toml. I wrote a thing to extract it out. And so what this will do is it'll say, get the key using this profile for this value, and then we would be able to extract it out. And then down below here for when you override the parameters, these would also come from the toml file. So basically, we wrote a tool to do that. And we might end up using it because I wouldn't mind if other people use my CFN toml tool because I think it's really awesome. It's only really useful in you can't use it with SAM, but you can use it with CloudFormation here. It must be open source. I know it's open source somewhere, but that's something that we'll definitely use in the bootcamp because that was an edge case or like a case that we had about loading different stuff. Yeah, here it is, CFN toml. I think I wrote it in Ruby too. The Ruby. Oh, is it a private repo? Well, that's no fun, Baco. We'll have to make it public.
Oh,
No
okay,
wonder
so
nobody knows about it.
before stacksets, even we used to use, I think Dan also mentioned, one is parameters, mappings, and conditions. Actually, a lot of people miss out conditions as a section in CloudFormation. So where you could say, hey, if a parameter value environment, let's say environment type is a parameter value, and you could say, if this parameter value the user enters production, then as a condition, you can also set which resources you should create in the production environment, because it could happen that in a development environment, you don't need all like auto scaling group and bigger RDS instance. You only need maybe one EC2 instance, but you have the same template in which you have EC2 instance, auto scaling group, and RDS. And you could say, if it is production, then create the auto scaling group. But if it is a dev environment, only create the EC2 instance. So you could add conditions. Yeah, that's the one. So that helps as well. I think the YAML example is much clearer here, honestly.
And so I think that we will try to take advantage of conditions in our templates because that probably is a more I have like this complex way of doing it, but this way is obviously another way that you can do it and simpler and natively into the thing. But we are running out of time here. We have about 4 minutes, and it's not that we can't go over time. It's just that I'd like to keep this pattern here. After the stream, as always, we always have our Q&A after class where you can ask questions for the audience. Rohini is invited to come if time permits. If not, it's totally okay. But that will be afterwards. We did do this change set here. I can't remember if we triggered it. I just want to see if we now... this should now be in the S3 bucket. So I wanted to see if that shows up in our bucket here. If it doesn't, it's not a big deal. But we'll keep our fingers crossed. Oh, your fingers are crossed. Good. Yes. And we will go over to CFN artifacts. Oh, there's the template. So there we go. So we can download it if we wanted to, but there we are. So I think we have achieved our goals for today. Folks, we are going to have a lot of videos this week. They're not hard, but we do have a lot of CloudFormation to cover. But I promise you by the end of it, you will be very, very comfortable with CloudFormation and IaC. It'll be an extremely useful skill for you. I want to thank our guest instructor, Rohini, for helping us out. And Shala, as always, thank you to all of our boot campers who are sticking with the boot camp. We're near the end. We only have a few more weeks to go. So just keep with it. And don't worry if you're late. Just worry that you can finish the boot camp, and I'll definitely still grade your stuff. But we'll go, and I'll see you in after class in the Discord. So we'll see you later. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you. Bye-bye.